Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboine Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends, to this very special Trust the Profits episode, as we are going to be taking a preview of the 5, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 graded stakes races taking place on Friday's Belmont Stakes card. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a graded stakes preview here. It's just going to be me. I'm running solo today. I was going to get my good friend Sarah El Badwi on, but Sarah is, of course, slammed with a lot of work going on at Belmont this week. But I do have 1 or 2 of her picks and thoughts on this that I will share with you as we go through these 5 stakes preview races. And listen, before we get to that, make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube to get all of our great content on Trust the Profits. If this is your first time tuning into our network, we have a lot of live betting shows on Monday and Thursday evenings. We have handicapping episodes like this one. We have a lot of other graded stakes previews, horse racing news episodes, etc. We have something for every single type of racing fan that you might be, and we got you covered. So press that subscribe button. Additionally, like this video below and let me know in the comments, what's your best bet on Friday at Belmont? And let me know some of your picks for this 5 graded stakes race sequence. Now, they're not all in a row together, but we'll talk through all of them and give you a little bit of a sense of where I'm leaning and where I'm going and how I would be playing these races, both vertically and horizontally within their respective sequences. Again, they're not all grouped right together, but quick reminder, tomorrow, if you come back, I have a very special guest, David Aragona, the man who made the morning line for the Belmont Stakes, the morning line maker up there at New York, who also does a lot of great stuff for DRF. David is going to be joining me. We're going to be doing a late all stakes pick 5 preview of Saturday Belmont Day. So that's going to be a lot of fun. You can hear David's thoughts and mine on that late stakes pick 5 sequence. And of course, Friday morning, no different than always, capping the card, I'm going to go race 1 through the end of the card for Belmont Day. So a lot of great content for you to get you ready for this final leg of the Triple Crown and all the great races that go along with it. Well, let's dive into what I think are 5 really intriguing graded stakes races on the Friday card at Belmont. And it should be pointed out before we get into this, the weather looks beautiful. Weather looks gorgeous. So the weather should not be a factor at all up there. Rained a little bit on Tuesday, but there is absolutely no rain in the forecast for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. So it looks beautiful up there. The track should be fast and firm. Conditions should be great. No concerns about that from a handicapping perspective. We already have enough variables to worry about. Having one less variable like weather is a little bit of a burden off of our shoulders. But let's dive into the 5 graded stakes races on the card, and we'll start with the very first one on the card, which is the race number 4, which is the Just a Game Stakes Grade 1, and this is going a mile on the turf for 4-year-old and up fillies and mares, and it is on that Widener turf course, which is the outer turf course, if you want to think about it. Only a 5-horse field, highlighted by your morning line favorite in Italian for Chad Brown, the 1-2 morning line favorite. Then you have Spenderella, horse I like very, very much, for Graham Motion at 2-1 in the morning line. Then you get Belmont horse Wakanaka at 8-1. Speak of the Devil, another Chad Brown horse at 10-1, and New Year's Eve at 12-1. Listen, I think for a lot of folks, self-included, this is a single and move on. In Italian, I just don't think it's going to get pressed. I've been trying to bet against this horse for the last year and a half, it feels like, and I've been coming up short almost every single time. Thank God Tuesday bailed me out in the Breeders' Cup a little bit, but otherwise, In Italian has just been blowing through this division, and at a mile, I don't see how this horse gets beat. There is no other speed in this race. You might point to Spenderella as a horse that is typically forwardly placed, but when you look at the sort of fractions Spenderella runs when she's up on the front end versus the sort of fractions In Italian can put up on the front end and under pressure on the front end, it's just no competition at all. In Italian is just so much faster. She just had a really crisp 48 flat bullet work over the turf leading up to this race. She's all systems go, and I just think Irad takes her out there and just goes. And at a mile, and basically a one-turn mile, I mean, on the Widener turf course, they kind of start in the chute and then kind of come out, but it's basically a glorified one-turn mile race on the turf. I have a hard time seeing an Italian getting beat in any capacity. Now, I always like to try to find value. And so, listen, from a horizontal standpoint, I'm singling the one in Italian, moving on to the next race. I think this is the free square. If you're playing an early pick 4, early pick 5 sequence, that's certainly one that you can feel pretty confident in. If you're playing this race vertically and you don't just want to go 1-3 in terms of in Italian over Spenderella, I do think the 4 Wakanaka provides a little bit of value and logic in that perhaps Spenderella does try to go with an Italian and gets a little worn out. Wakanaka's got some nice late speed. This is a horse I've always really liked in the Belmont barn. Joel Rosario in a 5-horse field can't possibly get the horse in that much trouble, right? And so I think, the horse kind of fits Rosario's running style of coming from behind. I think Wakanaka can make one big run, get up on the board. I'll absolutely be including her in, some exactas, hoping that she and an Italian can kind of, go 1-2. In Italian goes 1. Wakanaka finishes 2. A 1-4 exacta might pay a little bit better than obviously the 1-3 exacta. So might take a little bit of a shot there with Wakanaka in terms of a vertical play. But this one, I'm not going to try to outsmart myself. When I talked to Sarah about this race, she felt the same way. This was kind of a single for her and move on. Even though she and I both love Spenderella, it's all in Italian all day, I think, in the Just a Game Stakes to kick things off in race number 4 on Friday as the first graded stakes. Now let's move on to what I think is a more intriguing race, which is and this kicks off the late all stakes pick 4, which is the New York Stakes, grade 1, going 1.25 miles on the turf for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares. And this is on the inner turf course. Now, this is a more interesting race. And some people might say, Matthew, what are you talking about? Warlike Goddess is a beast. And Warlike Goddess is a beast. No doubt about it. 6-5 favorite for Belmont with Joel Rosario aboard. Love Belmont. I root for Belmont a lot. I like Joel Rosario, despite me occasionally throwing shade at him, but I really do like him as a jockey. He's thrilling in a lot of ways. He can give him some mind-numbing rides at times, but when he's on, he's one of the best. But lately, it does seem like his timing is still a little off. I thought he was back, in that Oaklawn meet, and then, it just feels like he's a little off occasionally now and again with the type of rides he's giving. Warlike Goddess is a horse that he's gotten in trouble before and who should never have lost that race last year, should never have lost the Flower Bowl up at Saratoga last year, but did. Came back and looked really good running the next couple of times against the boys, finishing 3rd in that Breeders' Cup turf. Then came back in the Bewitch and looked great. But here's the thing. This race is in 1.25 miles. Warlike Goddess does her best running the longer she goes. The longer she goes, the better she is. 1 3/8, 1.5 miles, that's where she is at her best. The only time she's ever run 1.25 miles, she didn't even hit the board. That was actually her worst performance. So something to keep in mind. When you go back and look at the very one, which is 1 3/16, so a little, not quite 1.25 miles. But that was the one time she didn't hit the board in her entire career. Otherwise, she's 13 for 14 with 10 wins. I'm probably going to take a swing against her here. And if I'm playing horizontally, I'm probably just going too deep in this one because I will include Warlike Goddess, probably more of a defensive play. But my top pick from a vertical standpoint, maybe I'll just attack this race vertically, is Didia. I really like this horse a lot for Ignacio Correas IV. She's just done nothing wrong. And she's coming to the United States from Argentina. And I think a lot of people maybe go, what about that Argentinian form? Is it really that good? What has she done? Absolutely nothing wrong. She goes out first 2 times at Colonial, wins in debut in an optional claimer 75, comes back, wins the Old Nelson over, horses like Alms and In a Hurry who come back to win again. Then takes a long break from August until March, comes back at the fairgrounds and that really funky turf course and wins the Benson Memorial and wins that over Adventuring in New Year's Eve, who we just talked about in the previous race, and then steps up and goes 1 1/8 miles at Churchill Downs and easily wins the grade 3 Modesty. So I like that this horse has been going kind of high level allowance, listed stakes, grade 3. Horse's speed figures have been ascending. The horse has run 1.25 miles before and won twice at 1.25 miles down in Argentina. Now, you could, take that for what it's worth, but those were 2 Group 1 races down in Argentina. This horse won at 1.25 miles. So Doing the distance is not an issue here. You're getting more value at 5-1. I think Didia makes a little bit of sense in this particular race. And she's also really useful in that there's not a lot of speed in this race. And Didia can sit a lot of different types of trips. She's got tactical speed and she can sit a little closer to the front than you might otherwise think. So I think she makes a lot of sense in this race. She can sit a few different types of trips at 5-1 on the morning line. You're getting a little bit better value. I'm actually a little out on the Charlie Appleby horse. I know he's bringing over William Buick, which is usually a telltale sign that they mean business. When Buick comes over, they are loaded for bear. But with the Moonlight, I just don't know about this horse breaking from the far outside 8 post. It just doesn't feel like this horse is necessarily in its best form. Just came off a really lackluster 6th place finish, granted over very soft turf last time out, going a mile and an eighth. Has never finished out of the exacta at this distance. 2 wins in 3 starts with the second. But again, I just, when she came over for the Jenny Wiley, she was beaten thoroughly by an Italian by 3 lengths, which, again, no disrespect there. But again, that was not maybe that strong of a field. And I just, at 9-2, I'm not necessarily thrilled with an Italian or with, I should say, with the Moonlight as being the alternative to Warlike Goddess. So I'll go with Didia as a value, as a horse to consider using from a value standpoint. I do think McCulloch, the other Chad, is a horse to consider. Chad's, there's always a lot of Chads. You got Chantasar, you got Market Segmentation, you got Virginia Joy, and you got McCulloch in there for Chad Brown. Market Segmentation is the top choice from the morning line standpoint. I'll go with the other Chad, which is McCulloch, and that's been something that's worked for me before in terms of McCulloch being a horse that I do think is useful. Again, a little bit like Didia, can sit a little bit more of a forward trip. And I think at a mile and a quarter, that really matters, and can sit a little bit closer to this pace and get a little bit of a jump. Second back from a layoff. I do think there's a natural progression from a speed figure standpoint. Granted, finished 5th in that Modesty last time out. But again, that was the first start from October until May. I mean, this horse had not run in 8 months and now is kind of coming back second time, has had some nice maintenance works since that run in the Modesty. So 8-1, that's a horse I'll include underneath. From a vertical standpoint, I'll probably do something like Didia up top with Warlike Goddess and with the Moonlight underneath with McCulloch included. From a horizontal standpoint, like I said, depending on how you want to play the rest of the sequence, I'll probably go 3-7 and see if I can go a little skinnier here. I might not single any one of these. And again, Warlike Goddess, some of this might depend on the board. If Warlike Goddess is down at 3-5, then I may just go Didia and just single Didia and move on to the next race, or go Didia and win the Moonlight or something like that and leave Warlike Goddess off my ticket. So a couple of different strategies depending on how the board is playing out leading up to this one. But let's talk about the Acorn Stakes, which is, of course, the kind of the third leg of the female Triple Crown. It's not really, but because rarely do you ever see horses actually, females and fillies running all 3 legs of the Oaks, the Black-Eyed Susan, and the Acorn. But coming back here in the Acorn Stakes, which is a 1-turn mile on the dirt, mile on the 16th for 3-year-old fillies, and it's an 8-horse field. And looking at this one, it's interesting because there's a lot of speed in this race. First, let's talk about Money's Gold. Money's Gold is the morning line favorite at 9-5. I'm out on this horse. She got beaten the 8 bells last time out, going 7 furlongs against Open Company for the first time. Not for the first time, but for the first non-maiden race. And had been running those 2 races previous, those monster speed figure races, had been run against state-restricted Florida breds. Then ran against Open Company, lost to Red Carpet Ready, which, hey, there's no disrespect in that. Red Carpet Ready's an amazing horse. But now we're going from 7 furlongs to a mile and a 16th. It's still a 1-turn race, so no doubt about it. But you look at the rest of this field, the number 7, Good Girl, Bad Habits, the Brittany Russell horse, has got a lot of speed. From a Timeform US standpoint, has actually the same type of opening speed, 1:16 early speed figure. Money's Gold's got a 1:17 early speed figure. Then you look at a horse like Randomized, the Chad Brown runner who just broke her maiden last time out, 1:16 early speed figure. Then you look at the rail on Darth Vader, 1:15 early speed figure in this race from the rail, and you figure he's got to go. I just think this sets up really nicely for Pretty Mischievous, who is tactical and can sit close. But I think in this particular race, especially breaking from that 6 hole, I'd imagine she's going to let a lot of horses run out in front of her and go, okay, go get them. And she'll kind of sit second flight or maybe even a little further back and then make one big run late. And I think this sets up really nicely for the Kentucky Oaks winner, who's your second choice on the morning line at 2-1. I really like her in this spot. I mean, maybe this is a single for me in this sort of sequence from a horizontal standpoint, because I can't get there on Money's Gold, taking them gate to wire under this much potential pressure. I don't view Good Girl, Bad Habits or Randomized as legitimate win threats, but I do view them as horses that can absolutely muck up the pace and make things more challenging for Money's Gold, going a brand new distance for the first time and going over a mile for the first time. The horse that's intriguing is, of course, Darth Vader from the inside rail. And I don't love the rail draw for that horse. I would have loved if this horse drew a little further outside, because Darth Vader is a horse that, it was interesting. One of the DRF reporters indicated, this is a horse that can wake up, as he said, and kind of run a 59 flat 5 furlong bullet in her sleep. And she can. I mean, you go back, you look at that April 25th work, 58-1. Are you getting out of here? Are you kidding me? 59-1, 59 flat, 59-3. I mean, this horse can run bullets all day long. Change barn from Michael Yates to George Weaver. George Weaver has this horse running a 101-1 5 furlong. A little bit different. Maybe don't show quite as much speed. Maybe sit a little bit more. And this horse can sit. And this horse actually has run really well sitting just off the pace. The problem is, from that inside rail with all the other speed in this race, I don't know the trip Darth Vader gets, because you don't want to get shuffled back too far, but maybe you do. Maybe you don't mind sitting a little bit further back second flight and letting Money's Gold, Randomized, and Good Girl, Bad Habits wear each other out. And then, like I said with Pretty Mischievous, making a late launch. So I think Darth Vader, if she can get the right trip, if Johnny Velasquez can get the right trip, I like it. If she gets sucked up into that pace, I just worry about how that's going to sustain. Now, I do think a 1-turn mile is perfect for her. So like I said, there are so many things I like about Darth Vader in this spot. Going to be absolutely using this horse underneath vertically. Don't know about the win threat, though. The other horse that's a little interesting to me is a colt, who is the Chad Brown filly. And this is one that, it's interesting to me that this is a horse that can absolutely do the distance, can sit a few different types of trips. Probably in this sort of a race will sit a very similar trip to Pretty Mischievous. The difference is just doesn't quite have the same late kick that Pretty Mischievous does. Ran really well in the Busan, but came back and I think disappointed a little bit in that Gazelle, finishing 5th in a 6-horse race. Listen, Chad is obviously very successful at this Belmont meet, 26% on the meet, doing really well. Jose Ortiz also winning a lot of races, 27% for him at the meet so far. So makes a lot of sense, but would need to take a pretty big step up in speed figures to compete with a horse like Darth Vader, who ran an 87 buyer last time out, and Pretty Mischievous, who ran a 92 buyer last time out. So listen, I think those make sense. I think if you're also looking, maybe the other Chad again in this race, a Seed is kind of an interesting horse that I think could sit a very similar trip to Pretty Mischievous. So again, playing vertically, I probably will play something like a, maybe a try with Pretty Mischievous up top, followed by Darth Vader, a colt, and a Seed, and using those 4 horses in some capacity, or using those 3 other horses outside of Pretty Mischievous in the exacta or trifecta. I think those types of horses can sit a better trip in this particular race. So that's where I'm going in the Acorn. Well, let's move to the Belmont Gold Cup, which is the 10th race on the card and the second to last and the 4th of these graded stakes races on the Friday card. And this is going 2 miles, folks, on the turf for 4-year-old and ups. And I talked about fading Charlie Appleby's horse with the Moonlight, one of the races, 2 races ago. I am not going to be fading Siskany in this race at all. That is absolutely going to be my top pick for Charlie Appleby here. This is a horse I like a lot with William Buick aboard. Very good horse that is 13 for 18 lifetime in the money, 7 wins and 18 career starts, is used to this marathon distance. The interesting part is a lot of these horses in this race that are American horses are used to running a mile and a half at most, running a mile and 3/8, running a mile and an eighth, running a mile and a quarter. Very few of them have run over a mile and a half. Now, there are some exceptions. You have a few horses that were actually hurdlers that have been running on the hurdles recently. L'Imperador, actually, the number 6 horse in this race for Trevor McCarthy and Archibald Kinsley Jr., that's actually a horse that's been hurdling the last 3 times out. I know we remember him from the flat races, but L'Imperador has been a horse that's been hurdling quite a bit recently. The number 1 horse has been hurdling. Barbados has been hurdling as well. And then you look at some other horses that we've always really liked, and you look at a horse like Cross Border has also been hurdling lately. Now, I bring that up because those hurdling horses, and high definition, we should mention for Joseph O'Brien, also one of those hurdlers. The thing about the hurdlers is they're running a 2.5, 2 1/16 miles. They're doing the distance. So they are marathon horses. There should be in top condition for doing that. The competition level is a little bit different. What the horse is being asked to do is a little bit different. Now, suddenly the horse has gone from being asked to doing hurdles to now running back in flat racing. A little bit different, okay? I typically don't like betting horses that have been hurdling and then coming back to flats. There have been some successes. I know there was a horse last year that did this down at Colonial that was running on the hurdles and then comes onto the turf, flat race, and wins. You don't see it that often, though. So I think for some of these horses, you can kind of cross lines from my handicapping perspective through a few of them. Siskany, like I said, I just can't get past this one. This is a horse that, going back to my initial point, is used to going 2 miles, mile and 3/4, going well over that mile and a half, mile and 7/8, used to doing that. And so finished second in the Dubai Gold Cup at 2 miles last time out, finishing only second to Broom, a horse that I think we all know, if we follow European racing, a great horse, Broom. And so, and beat another really nice horse, Subjectivist, that day, actually in that Dubai Gold Cup. So I think Siskany makes a ton of sense here for Appleby and Godolphin. This is going to be my, top pick in this one, no doubt about it. And I'll probably single in this sequence. So again, because I single here, I can, spread a little bit more with Warlike Goddess earlier and things along those lines. So again, you can put together, I think, a pretty affordable late pick 4 ticket in this race. Now, from a value standpoint, if you're playing this one vertically, there are a couple of horses I like. I think a horse like Strong Tide, the number 5 horse from Michael Lauer with Dylan Davis aboard, makes a lot of sense. Dylan's gotten a few wins now on the card. I think he's gotten a little bit more confidence in the recent weeks. This is a horse that's coming off a really nice 3rd place finish in the Man of War as well, going a mile and 3/8. 3rd time back in the Fortman cycle. This horse has run 2+ miles before, actually ran in this race last year with Dylan aboard and finished 3rd in that race. So again, shows it can do the distance, understands this configuration, can do the job of 2 miles, and Dylan knows this horse as well. So like that, and I think this horse can absolutely run well underneath. 10-1, you're getting really nice value. And the other horse I'll shout out is another 10-1 horse for Graham Motion, the Gray Wizard, breaking all the way from the unlucky 13th post. Listen, he's going to have to overcome the post position, no doubt about it. This is a really interesting horse. That was a West Coast turf horse. Well, it started out as a Joseph O'Brien horse, actually, and broke its maiden actually on synthetic over in Ireland, and then came over to the United States and was on the East Coast for a little while. Graham had this horse running there, then actually took this horse back out to the West Coast, started going a little bit longer, won an allowance race there, put the horse, on the bench for a couple of months, came back and ran a really nice race in Keeneland, and a high-level allowance race going a mile and a half last time out. Now you're getting second back from the layoff. Horse has been training nicely at Fair Hills, which I always like to see with Graham, who's always really strong off the layoff. This horse has great late speed. It's going to come flying late. There is actually a little bit of pace in this race, or at least horses that are a little not allergic to being forwardly placed. So for a 2-mile race, there actually might be a little bit of pace in here. So for the Gray Wizard to run into. And listen, I'm also a Tolkien fan and a Lord of the Rings fan. So listen, you shall not pass, except I hope Gray Wizard passes a lot of horses, because I'm going to be using him in my exacta or trifecta. So I'm going to be playing Siskany up top with Strong Tide and the Gray Wizard underneath. All right, well, let's close things out with This is where you're going to spread. This is the spready race on the sequence. The other ones I can go 1-2 deep maybe, and that's it. Here's where I spread because I have a hard time picking in the Intercontinental Stakes Grade 3, going 6 furlongs on the turf for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares. Really nice field, highlighted by Brad Cox's Bubble Rock, who's a good horse, but let's not overstate things. I mean, he's 2 for 2 winning at this distance. Has won a Grade 2 in the Mrs. Revere. But otherwise there's a lot of, won the Grade 3 matron back as a 2-year-old. But other than that, it's a lot of, listed stakes races, and it's a lot of solid performances, 5 win and 12 efforts, 8 times in the exacta. But, this is far from an overwhelming horse. And then you look at a horse like Bay Storm, 3-1 for Jonathan Thomas with Johnny Velasquez aboard. This is a horse far better speed figures, actually, than Bubble Rock. When you look at the speed figure standpoint, Bay Storm really stands well above Bubble Rock. But the thing about Bay Storm is 13 for 14 lifetime in the money, but only 4 wins. 6 second places, 3/3. This horse just almost gets there a lot. The last 4 times out, 5 times out, second by a length and a half, third by a half length, second by a half length, third by 2.5, and second by a nose. The horse just doesn't get up and win at this graded stakes level, which is unfortunate because it's a really nice horse. Now, the benefit is this horse is cutting back. Some of those races that I mentioned were at a mile. Well, this horse is now running 6 furlongs. At 6 furlongs, this horse is 3 for 4 winning. So this is clearly this horse's best effort. Second back from a short layoff for Jonathan Thomas. I like this horse a lot. If I had to put a wager on a win bet, this is the win bet that I'm putting down in this race. But from a horizontal standpoint, I'm spreading a little bit more. Now, in terms of where else am I going to be spreading to? Honestly, the number 1, Poppy Flowers, is a really nice horse. I usually don't like the inside rail in turf sprint races, but again, hard to argue with this one. 3 for 4 in the money. Nice horse. Probably more of a horse to include in vertical exotics, but I do think this horse has a good enough race in her to win. Won a listed stakes race back at Saratoga last year, so has some ability to win at a pretty comparable level. The horse that's a real wild card here that I will be including in my horizontals is Sarah Harper, the number 2. 6-1 for Ron Moquette. Ran a really big race last time out on the turf, finishing 3rd behind Caravel and Bay Storm. That's only the horse's 2nd time ever on the turf. And there was a little bit of consternation because the first time out on the turf, the horse showed nothing. But that was also coming back from a really long layoff in a stakes race. Now you come back. This horse ran really well last time out at Churchill Downs. No Lasix. You're not getting Lasix again, so that's not a concern. Like I said, ran a 95 buyer speed figure that day. Ran really, really well and came from well off the pace and showed a completely different dimension, which I thought was really impressive because this horse normally is right up on the front, and Rosario took this horse back last time. Now you get Tyler Gaffleone up, so jockey change, something to keep in mind, but definitely one I like there. And then as a long shot that I'm going to throw in the horizontals, I'll throw in Clitheroe, who is 15-1 for Graham Motion. This is a horse that won at 6 furlongs, actually broke its maiden at 6 furlongs back in Europe, and just won first time out in North America after a 9-month layoff in a high-level allowance race going 7 furlongs at Belmont. So over this Belmont turf course, doing a 1-turn sprint. Now you're shortening up a little bit. This horse does like to come from the back, but that said was not that far off. I mean, it was by second call, was 4th by a length and a half. So this horse can sit a little bit more forward. You get Fergal Lynch aboard, who Graham works with a lot down at Laurel Park and in the Mid-Atlantic. Those two over the last year have been winning at a 23% clip. Fergal is kind of Graham Motion's guy at Laurel, at Pimlico, at Colonial Downs. You see the two of them team up quite a bit. So don't mind Fergal taking the mount on this one at all. And that's one that I'm kind of, like I said, a little bit intrigued by. But listen, this is one where I would definitely encourage you to spread in this last leg of the stakes race. All right. Well, that's going to do it for me for the Friday Graded Stakes preview here at Belmont. Hope everybody has a great day, and make sure to tune back for all of our additional Belmont Stakes coverage, late pick 5 preview with myself and David Aragona, and of course, capping the card where I'm going to give you my top pick, top value play for every single race on Saturday's card. All right, friends, until next time, my name is Matthew DeSantis, reminding you to have a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.